Black woman accidentally marries her billionaire boss. Months later, she received a shocking surprise. It started as a company retreat. One mistake. One courthouse paper signed without thinking. By morning, a quiet black woman wakes up legally married to the most powerful billionaire she works for. She keeps the secret, believing it will all be undone. But months later, she's summoned by his private lawyers, and what they tell her changes everything. The marriage wasn't just real, it triggered a hidden rule tied to his fortune and his life. Because the billionaire is dying. And the marriage was never an accident at all. Now she must face a truth that breaks her heart. Was she chosen for love, or used as a test? And when money, faith, and betrayal collide, will she walk away with her dignity, or stay and risk losing her soul? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Aurora liked the quiet that came after 5 o'clock. By then, the office floors emptied, the phones stopped ringing, and the lights dimmed to a soft glow that made the long rows of desks look calm instead of cold. It was the only time of day when Aurora felt fully herself. No small talk, no rushing, just numbers that made sense. She sat at her desk, shoulders relaxed, fingers moving steady across the keyboard. The spreadsheet on her screen balanced perfectly. Every column lined up, every dollar accounted for. She took quiet pride in that. Balance meant peace. Order meant safety. Aurora was a black woman in her early 30s, slim and neat, with kind eyes that noticed details others missed. She wore simple clothes to work, soft blouses, flat shoes, no jewelry except a small silver cross she kept tucked beneath her collar. It was not for show. It was for grounding. She leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes for a moment. "Thank you," she whispered, not to the room, but to the calm she felt inside. The sound of footsteps broke the stillness. Aurora opened her eyes and glanced toward the glass walls of the executive corridor. A tall man moved past, his reflection stretched thin in the polished floor. He walked with purpose, but carried something heavy in his shoulders, something that did not match his sharp suit or confident stride. That was her boss. Levi was the kind of man people noticed without trying. Late 30s, tall, clean-cut, always dressed in dark colors that made him look serious and untouchable. He was the founder and CEO of the company, a billionaire whose name appeared in magazines and business articles, often paired with words like brilliant and ruthless. But Aurora had learned something most people missed. Levi looked lonely. She saw it in the way he avoided eye contact, in the way his jaw tightened when meetings ran long, in how he stayed late almost every night, even when he did not need to. He paused, near her desk. "Still here?" he asked. His voice was low, controlled, not unkind, just distant. "Yes, sir," Aurora said, turning her chair slightly. "I wanted to finish the quarterly review before tomorrow." He nodded. "You don't have to stay late." "I know." She smiled, small and polite. "I don't mind." He studied her for a moment, as if he wanted to say more. Then he nodded again. "Good work," he said, and walked away. Aurora watched him disappear into his office. She did not smile this time. Praise from Levi was rare, but it always left her uneasy. It felt like standing in the sun too long, warm but uncomfortable. She packed her bag and shut down her computer. Outside, the sky had darkened to a deep blue. Streetlights blinked on one by one as she stepped into the elevator. On the ride down, she thought about her life. It was simple. A small apartment, a steady job, Sunday church, phone calls with her aunt back home. No drama, no surprises. She liked it that way. Her phone buzzed as she reached the lobby. Subject: mandatory company retreat, attendance required. Aurora frowned and opened the email. It announced a weekend retreat at a lakeside resort meant to strengthen team bonds and celebrate company milestones. Attendance was required for senior staff. She sighed softly. Aurora did not enjoy retreats. Too many people, too much forced cheer. Still, it was work, and work was something she knew how to handle. She tapped reply. Received. Thank you. The resort sat beside a wide lake that reflected the sky like glass. The next afternoon, buses lined the gravel drive, unloading employees with laughter and rolling suitcases. Aurora stepped off the bus last. She adjusted the strap of her bag and took a slow breath. The air smelled clean. Pine and water. It should have been relaxing. Instead, she felt tight. Inside the main lodge, people gathered near the check-in desk. Music played softly. Staff handed out room keys and schedules. Aurora scanned the room until she spotted Levi. He stood apart from the group, phone pressed to his ear, face pale. His voice was low, urgent. "No," he said. "I understand. I just need time." He ended the call and stared at the floor. Something was wrong. Throughout the afternoon, Levi barely spoke. During meetings, he stayed quiet. At dinner, he barely touched his food. The mood shifted around him, like people sensed a storm but did not know where it would land. Aurora watched from across the room. She did not mean to. It just happened. After dessert, employees gathered near the bar. Music grew louder. Laughter rose. Levi stood and lifted a glass. "A toast," he said. The room fell silent. "To this company," he continued. "To the people who built it." He drank. Then he drank again. Aurora's stomach tightened. She had never seen him like this. As the night wore on, Levi's steps grew unsteady. His words slurred slightly. No one knew what to do. No one wanted to step in. Aurora did. She approached him gently. "Sir, maybe it's time to rest." He looked at her, eyes glassy. For a moment he looked afraid. "Just tired," he said. "Let me help you to your room." He hesitated, then nodded. They walked slowly down the hall. The carpet muffled their steps. Levi leaned against the wall once, pressing a hand to his chest. "I got bad news today," he said suddenly. Aurora paused. "I'm sorry." "Doctors?" he muttered. "They say time is not on my side." Aurora's heart ached. She did not ask questions. She did not offer advice. She simply stayed beside him. That night blurred into confusion. A desk clerk, papers, Levi insisting on handling something himself, Aurora trying to keep him upright. By the time dawn crept through the windows, everything felt wrong. Aurora woke with a pounding headache. The room was unfamiliar. Pale curtains, a soft bed, her clothes still on. She sat up, heart racing. Then she saw the envelope on the nightstand. Her name was written on it. Inside was a folded document. She read the first line, "Marriage certificate." Her breath caught. She read it again, and again. Her name, his name, a courthouse seal. Aurora dropped the paper like it burned. "No," she whispered. A knock sounded at the door. "Miss?" A staff member called. "Your employer has already departed. He asked that you receive this." Aurora opened the door with shaking hands. The staff member gave her a small bag and a polite smile. "He left early this morning." Aurora closed the door slowly. She sat on the bed and stared at the wall. Outside, the sun rose bright and calm. Inside, Aurora's life had just shattered, and she had no idea how deep the damage would go. Aurora did not cry right away. At first, she just sat there, still in her clothes, staring at the marriage certificate like it was a trick paper someone had slipped into her room. The seal looked real. The signatures looked real. The date was last night. Her stomach rolled. She stood up too fast and had to grab the bedpost to steady herself. Her head still throbbed. Her mouth felt dry, like she had swallowed sand. She walked to the bathroom, splashed cold water on her face, and looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were wide. Her lips were pale. "This can't be real," she whispered, but the paper did not vanish when she looked away. Aurora walked back to the nightstand and picked it up again, holding it with both hands. She read every line, slow, as if the words might change if she stared long enough. They did not change. She had married Levi, her boss, a billionaire, the man who rarely smiled, who spoke in short sentences, who carried loneliness like a heavy coat. Aurora pressed the paper to her chest and took a shaky breath. She needed facts. She needed a plan. That was how she survived anything, by making it make sense. She found her phone. The battery was low. She had 3 missed calls from an unknown number and 1 voicemail. Her thumb hovered. Then she played it. A calm male voice spoke. "Miss, this is the resort front desk. Mr. Levi asked us to let you know he checked out early. He requested privacy and asked that we provide you with your personal belongings and any documents left for you. If you have questions, please contact your legal representative. Thank you." Aurora's throat tightened. Legal representative? She lowered the phone and stared at the screen. Something about that message made her skin crawl. Levi did not even leave a direct note. No apology, no explanation. Just paperwork and distance. She forced herself to breathe. Aurora grabbed the small bag the staff member had delivered. Inside were her car keys, her wallet, and her bracelet. Everything looked normal, like nothing had happened. But everything had happened. She changed into a clean blouse and jeans, brushed her hair back into a neat ponytail, and packed her suitcase with fast, stiff movements. Her hands shook the whole time. When she stepped into the hall, the resort felt strangely quiet. The retreat was still happening, but most people were outside by the lake, doing team games and laughing too loud. Aurora could hear it through the window. That normal noise made her feel even more alone. At the front desk, she spoke in a steady voice. "I need to check out." The clerk looked surprised. "Already?" "Yes." Aurora swallowed. Did Mr. Levi say where he went?" The clerk glanced down, uncomfortable. "He only said he had an emergency. A driver picked him up before sunrise." Aurora nodded like that answer made sense, even though it didn't. She pushed again, gently. "Was there a courthouse involved last night?" The clerk's eyes widened. There was paperwork. A booking. I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't know the details. Mr. Levi spoke to the night manager." Aurora's cheeks burned. She wanted to demand answers. She wanted to shout. But she could not do that in a lobby full of strangers. "Thank you," she said softly. She walked to her car, set her suitcase in the trunk, and sat behind the wheel. Her hands rested on the steering wheel, but she did not start the engine yet. She stared out at the lake. The water shined under the morning sun. Birds skimmed the surface. It looked peaceful enough to belong in a postcard. Aurora felt sick. She remembered pieces of the night. The banquet, the toast, Levi's pale face, his words, "Doctors, time is not on my side." She remembered helping him walk, his weight leaning against her for a second. She remembered a desk clerk asking questions. She remembered Levi insisting, "It's fine, just do it." She had thought he meant signing out of something, a billing form, a waiver, anything, not marriage. Aurora pressed her forehead to the steering wheel. "Oh, Lord," she whispered, "help me." Then she started the engine. The drive home felt longer than it should have. Aurora kept the radio off. She needed silence to think, but her mind did not stay quiet. Questions spun like a storm. Was Levi drunk enough not to know what he was doing? Was she? Did anyone force it? Was it some kind of prank? And if it was real, what did it mean? Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She let it ring out. She could not talk to anyone yet. Her voice might crack. Her fear might spill out. By the time she reached her apartment, the sun was high. She carried her suitcase inside and locked the door behind her, like she was shutting out danger. She set the certificate on the kitchen table and stared at it again. Aurora did the one thing she always did when life got messy. She searched for answers. She opened her laptop and typed, "How to annul a marriage," into the search bar. She clicked on legal websites. She read definitions. She skimmed lists. She tried to calm her breathing. Annulment, divorce, time limits, grounds. Her eyes blurred. Nothing felt real. She needed a person. A human voice, someone who could tell her what to do next. Aurora reached for her phone and called the one lawyer she knew, an older woman from her church who helped people with simple legal matters. Her name was Ms. Darlene Brooks, and she was the kind of woman who always smelled like peppermint and spoke like truth was a warm blanket. Ms. Brooks answered on the second ring. "Aurora, baby, you all right?" Aurora's throat tightened at the kindness in that voice. I need to see you." There was a pause. What happened? Aurora swallowed hard. Something bad, something confusing. "Come by," Ms. Brooks said, voice gentle but firm. "Right now, if you can." Aurora grabbed her keys. Ms. Brooks's office sat in a small building near the church. The waiting room had soft chairs and a little table with old magazines. A framed photo of Ms. Brooks with her grandchildren sat near the front desk. Aurora walked in with the certificate tucked in a folder, hands sweating. Ms. Brooks met her at the door of her office. She was in her 50s, with silver streaks in her hair and eyes that missed nothing. She guided Aurora into a chair like she was guiding her into safety. "Tell me," Ms. Brooks said. Aurora opened the folder with trembling fingers and slid the paper across the desk. Ms. Brooks put on her reading glasses and read it slowly. Her eyebrows lifted. Then her mouth tightened. "Oh, Lord," she murmured. Aurora's eyes filled. "So it's real?" Ms. Brooks looked up. "This certificate looks official, yes. Where did this happen?" "At a retreat," Aurora said, voice small. "My boss. He was drinking. He was upset. He said he got bad news from doctors. I tried to help him. I thought I was helping him sign something else." Ms. Brooks nodded, thinking. "Do you remember saying vows?" "No." Aurora shook her head quickly. "I don't even remember leaving the resort. I woke up in a room, alone, still dressed. And the certificate was there." Ms. Brooks leaned back, eyes kind. "All right. First thing, breathe." Aurora tried. Her chest hurt. Ms. Brooks continued. "Second thing, we don't assume anything. We gather facts. You did not consent knowingly from what you're telling me. That matters." Aurora's voice shook. "He left. He's gone. He didn't even talk to me." Ms. Brooks's gaze softened. "That part I don't like." Aurora looked down at her hands. "What do I do?" Ms. Brooks folded her hands on the desk. "We can try to file for annulment, depending on the laws and details. We may need statements. We may need proof you were misled." Aurora flinched. "Proof?" "Yes," Ms. Brooks said gently. "But listen, baby, annulment is not always quick. Sometimes it's easier to file for divorce. Either way, it will take time." Time. Aurora felt like she was drowning in that word. She did not want time. She wanted this erased. Ms. Brooks added, "You also need to protect yourself. People will talk if this comes out. We keep this private until you decide what you want." Aurora swallowed. "I want it gone." Ms. Brooks nodded. "Then we start there. But I'll be honest, if your boss is powerful, his lawyers might make this complicated. Aurora's stomach twisted. He's a billionaire. Ms. Brooks gave a small, dry smile. Yes, which means this won't be simple. Aurora's eyes brimmed again. I didn't ask for any of this. I know, Ms. Brooks said softly, and you won't go through it alone. Aurora clung to those words like a rope. Ms. Brooks stood. I'm going to make copies of this. Then I want you to go home, eat something, and rest. You can't fight a storm with an empty body. Aurora nodded, though she didn't feel hungry. As Ms. Brooks stepped to the copier, Aurora stared at the office wall. A verse was framed there in neat script. Be still, and know that I am God. Aurora's throat tightened again. Be still. How could she be still when her life had just flipped upside down? Ms. Brooks returned with copies. I'll do some calls, she said, but I want you to promise me something. Aurora blinked. What? Don't contact him yet. Not while you're shaking like this. Not while your emotions are high. Ms. Brooks said, if he's sick, or scared, or hiding something, you don't need to step into that blind. Aurora nodded slowly. Okay. Ms. Brooks touched her hand. One more thing. This is important. Aurora looked up. Ms. Brooks's eyes were steady. Whatever happens next, you keep your dignity. Money and power can't buy that. Don't let them take it from you. Aurora swallowed hard. I won't. Back at her apartment, the afternoon light slanted across the floor. Aurora heated soup but barely ate. She sat at her small kitchen table, staring at the marriage certificate again. The paper felt heavy, like it had weight beyond ink. She tried to picture Levi's face when it happened. Was he angry? Sad? Confused? Did he know? Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. This time she answered. Hello? A pause. Then a voice she recognized, though she had only heard it in meetings. It was Levi's assistant. Miss Aurora, the woman said carefully. Mr. Levy has requested that all employees respect his privacy. He will not be reachable for an extended period. Aurora's fingers tightened around the phone. Where is he? I'm not authorized to share that. Aurora's voice shook. He married me. There was a sharp inhale on the other end. Silence. Then the assistant's voice dropped, urgent. I didn't know. Aurora swallowed. Do you know what happened? Do you know why? I don't, the assistant whispered. But I can tell you this. He left the country. His travel was scheduled fast. Doctors were involved. Doctors again. Aurora's stomach sank. Before she could ask more, the assistant added, Please be careful. There are lawyers around him. People who don't like surprises. Then the line went dead. Aurora stared at her phone. Lawyers, doctors, privacy, secrets. Her heart pounded harder. She felt like she had stepped into a world with locked doors everywhere. That evening, she took a long shower and tried to scrub the fear off her skin. She put on soft pajamas and sat on her couch with a blanket around her shoulders. Outside, the city moved on like nothing had happened. Aurora opened her Bible on her lap, but the words blurred as tears finally slipped down her cheeks. She wiped them away fast, angry at herself for crying. But then she let them fall. Because she was scared. Because she felt trapped. Because she did not know if she was now tied to a man who might be dying, or to a man who might be hiding something darker. Aurora leaned back and stared at the ceiling. A quiet thought rose in her mind, sharp and heavy. This isn't over, and deep down she knew it had only just begun. Aurora slept poorly that night. Her dreams came in pieces, bright lights, papers sliding across a desk, Levi's voice calling her name and then fading away. Each time she woke, her heart raced like she had been running. By morning, she felt hollowed out. She rose before sunrise and sat on the edge of her bed, feet flat on the floor, hands resting in her lap. She breathed in slowly, then out. "Okay," she said aloud, "one step at a time." She dressed for work like she always did. Neutral blouse, dark slacks, hair pulled back. The routine helped. It reminded her that she was still herself, even if her life felt unfamiliar. On the bus ride downtown, she stared out the window and watched the city wake up. People hurried along sidewalks with coffee cups and tired faces. No one knew what had happened to her. That gave her a strange sense of comfort. At the office, everything looked the same. The front desk smiled. The elevator chimed. The floors hummed with quiet activity. Aurora walked to her desk and set down her bag. Her email inbox was full. Most messages were routine, reports, requests, meeting reminders. Then she saw one subject line that made her stomach tighten. From Legal Affairs. She hesitated, then opened it. The message was brief and formal. It stated that Mr. Levi would be unavailable for an extended period due to personal matters. All major decisions would be handled through his legal team. Employees were reminded to maintain professionalism and confidentiality. Aurora leaned back in her chair. Confidentiality. She closed her eyes for a moment. The word felt heavy. It pressed down on her chest like a warning. The day moved slowly. Aurora worked through tasks, answered emails, attended a short meeting. She spoke when spoken to. She nodded. She smiled when expected. Inside, she felt like glass. At lunchtime, she usually ate with a small group from accounting. That day, she took her sandwich to a quiet corner near the windows. She needed space. As she unwrapped her lunch, her phone buzzed. A new message. No number. No name. Just a photo. Aurora's breath caught. It was a picture of a lake at sunrise, the same lake from the resort. Mist curled over the water. The light was soft and pale. Below the photo was a single line of text. "I'm sorry." Aurora's fingers trembled. She stared at the screen, heart pounding. Was it Levi? Was it a mistake? Was someone watching her? She typed back before she could stop herself. "Who is this?" The reply came almost instantly. Someone who made a terrible mistake. Aurora's throat tightened. She pushed her chair back and stood, her lunch forgotten. She walked quickly to the stairwell and stepped inside, letting the door close behind her. The space was quiet and smelled faintly of cleaning spray. She typed again. "Are you him?" There was a pause this time, long enough to make her chest ache. Then, "Yes." Aurora pressed her back against the wall. "Why did you leave?" She typed, anger bleeding into her fingers. "Why didn't you talk to me?" Another pause. "I didn't know how. I was ashamed, and I was afraid." Aurora's eyes burned. "Afraid of what? Of hurting you more than I already had." She laughed softly, bitter. Too late. Her phone buzzed again. "I wasn't myself that night. I got news that changed everything. I didn't trust my own judgment." Aurora closed her eyes. She could see his face again. Pale, strained, tired. "Then why sign papers?" She typed. "Why bind me to you without asking?" This time, the pause was longer. "I believed I was signing something else. And when I realized the truth later, I didn't undo it. That part was my choice." Aurora's heart sank. Why? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Because for the first time in my life, someone stayed with me when I had nothing to offer. No power, no answers. Aurora slid down the wall until she was sitting on the stair. "That doesn't give you the right to test me," she typed. "I'm not an experiment." Another message came, careful and slow. "You're right. And I don't expect forgiveness. I only wanted you to know I didn't do this out of cruelty." Aurora wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What do you want from me now? The reply took longer this time. When it came, it was simple. Nothing. I won't contact you again unless you ask me to. I'm sorry. Aurora stared at the screen. Part of her wanted to throw the phone. Another part wanted to keep reading, to ask more, to understand. But understanding did not erase harm. She typed one last message. I need space. I understand, came the reply. Then silence. Aurora stayed in the stairwell until her breathing slowed. She stood, smoothed her clothes, and returned to her desk like nothing had happened. That evening, she went to church. The building was quiet, the way she liked it during the week. Sunlight filtered through stained glass and painted soft colors across the wooden pews. Aurora slid into her usual spot and bowed her head. She did not know what to pray for. So she told the truth. I'm angry, she whispered. I'm scared, and I don't know what you're doing. She sat there for a long time. After a while, footsteps echoed softly. Someone sat beside her. It was the church mentor, the woman who had watched Aurora grow into herself over the years. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her hands folded in her lap. You look tired, the woman said gently. Aurora nodded. I am. They sat in silence for a moment, then Aurora spoke. She did not plan the words, they simply came. I'm married. The mentor blinked. Married. Yes. Aurora swallowed. By accident. That got a soft, knowing smile. Those are the ones that usually aren't accidents. Aurora huffed out a weak laugh. He's my boss, and he's sick, and I think he tested me without telling me. The mentor listened. She did not interrupt. She did not rush. When Aurora finished, her chest felt lighter, even though the story itself was still heavy. The mentor nodded slowly. That's a lot to carry alone. Aurora's voice cracked. I didn't ask for this. No, the mentor agreed. But here you are. Aurora stared ahead. What do I do? The mentor folded her hands. You don't have to decide everything today. Sometimes faith is just choosing not to harden your heart while you protect it. Aurora let that sink in. I don't know if I can forgive him, she admitted. The mentor's voice was kind but firm. Forgiveness doesn't mean staying, and it doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to let someone else's fear turn you into someone you're not. Aurora's eyes filled again. I don't want money, she said. I just want peace. The mentor nodded. Then keep choosing peace, one day at a time. The weeks that followed settled into a strange rhythm. Aurora went to work. She kept her head down. She avoided questions. Levi remained absent, his presence replaced by lawyers and emails written in careful language. One afternoon, a letter arrived at Aurora's apartment. Handwritten. No return address. She stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside was a single page. I promised not to contact you, but I felt compelled to write once more. Not to explain myself, but to thank you. You treated me like a human being when I was at my weakest. Whatever happens next, that mattered more than you know. Aurora folded the letter and set it aside. She did not reply. But she did not throw it away either. That night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She thought about how fragile people were, even powerful ones, how fear could twist good intentions into harmful actions, how easy it was to hurt someone without meaning to. She turned onto her side and pulled the blanket up to her chin. A thought surfaced, quiet but steady. This story is not finished. Aurora did not know what the ending would be. But she knew one thing. She would not lose herself along the way. The letter stayed on Aurora's kitchen table for 3 days. She did not move it. She did not reread it. She did not tear it up. Each morning she walked past it with her coffee and pretended it was just another piece of mail. Each night she turned off the light and felt its presence like a quiet question waiting for an answer. On the fourth morning, her phone rang. This time the number was not hidden. It was local. Aurora stared at the screen, her heart beating faster. She let it ring once, twice. Then she answered. "Hello." "Ms. Aurora," a man's voice said, calm, polished. "This is Mr. Harlan from the legal office representing Mr. Levi." Aurora's shoulders stiffened. "Yes? I'm calling to formally request a meeting," he continued, "at your earliest convenience." Her stomach dropped. "About what?" "There are matters that require your direct involvement," he said smoothly. "In person." Aurora closed her eyes for a moment. She already knew this conversation would not end with comfort. "When?" she asked. "Tomorrow morning?" he replied. 10 o'clock, our downtown office." She hesitated. "Is this required?" There was a brief pause, just long enough to feel like a warning. "It would be wise," Mr. Harlan said. Aurora swallowed. "I'll be there." When the call ended, she sat at the table and stared at her hands. They were steady, but she felt like something inside her was slipping. She called Ms. Brooks right away. "I got a call from his lawyers," Aurora said. Ms. Brooks sighed. "I figured they'd reach out soon. They want to meet tomorrow." "All right," Ms. Brooks said. "I'll come with you." Aurora felt a wave of relief. "Thank you." "Of course," Ms. Brooks replied. "And Aurora, whatever they say, remember this, you don't owe anyone silence." The next morning came too fast. Aurora, dressed carefully. A simple navy dress, low heels, hair pulled back. She wanted to look calm, capable, and unbreakable, even if she didn't feel that way. Ms. Brooks met her outside the building. The law office sat in a tall glass tower that reflected the sky. Everything about it felt cold and sharp. Inside, the air smelled like polished floors and expensive cologne. They were led into a conference room with a long table and leather chairs. A man in his 40s stood when they entered. He was tall, thin, with grey at his temples, and eyes that missed nothing. "Ms. Aurora," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Mr. Harlan. Thank you for coming." Aurora shook his hand briefly. "This is Ms. Brooks," she said. "Of course," Mr. Harlan replied, nodding politely. "Please, have a seat." They sat. Mr. Harlan folded his hands on the table. "I'll be direct. The situation involving your marriage to Mr. Levi has triggered a clause within his estate and ethics framework." Aurora felt her pulse quicken. "What does that mean?" "It means the marriage is valid," he said, "and legally binding." Ms. Brooks leaned forward. "We're aware of that. We're exploring annulment options." Mr. Harlan nodded. "Yes. However, annulment may not be as simple as you believe." Aurora's chest tightened. "Why not?" "Because the marriage activated a protective protocol," he explained. "One designed to ensure that any spouse who entered the relationship without knowledge of Mr. Levi's wealth is shielded from undue influence." Aurora blinked. "Shielded?" "Yes," Mr. Harlan said. "You were married without knowing the full extent of his assets. That matters." Aurora stared at him. "I didn't know anything. I didn't agree to anything." "And that," he said calmly, "is exactly why the clause exists." Ms. Brooks frowned. "Are you saying this was planned?" Mr. Harlan paused, carefully. "Mr. Levi created the framework years ago, after repeated experiences of betrayal." Aurora's hands curled into fists under the table. "So I'm part of some test?" Mr. Harlan did not deny it. "He wanted to know," the lawyer said, "if someone could stand beside him without knowing who he truly was in the public sense." Aurora's breath caught. "That's not love. That's manipulation. Ms. Brooks nodded sharply. And it's unethical. Mr. Harlan met her gaze. You're not wrong, which is why the system also protects you. Aurora laughed softly, a sound edged with disbelief. Protects me how? If Mr. Levi passes, Mr. Harlan said, voice steady. You are his legal spouse. You would inherit according to the estate plan. The room went very quiet. Aurora felt dizzy. Passes? Mr. Harlan's eyes softened just a little. Mr. Levi is seriously ill. Ms. Brooks inhaled sharply. How ill? I can't share medical details, he replied, but time is a concern. Aurora stared at the table. Her reflection stared back at her in the polished surface. Pale, shocked. So let me understand, she said slowly. He marries me by mistake, then keeps it because it suits his fear, and now I'm being told I could inherit his fortune if he dies. Yes, Mr. Harlan said, but there is more. Aurora looked up. Of course there is. The ethics clause restricts certain actions. He continued. Mr. Levi cannot pressure you, he cannot coerce you, and he cannot reveal his wealth in a way that would compromise your consent. Aurora's voice shook. I never consented. And that, Mr. Harlan said gently, is why your choices now matter greatly. Ms. Brooks crossed her arms. What choices? Mr. Harlan looked at Aurora. You may pursue annulment, but doing so would require statements, reviews, and public exposure. Or you may remain legally married with full autonomy until Mr. Levi is able to speak with you directly. Aurora's chest ached. He hasn't contacted me. He will, Mr. Harlan said. When he is able. When? Aurora asked. After he decides if I pass his test? Mr. Harlan lowered his gaze. I can't answer that. Aurora pushed her chair back slightly. This is cruel. Ms. Brooks placed a hand on Aurora's arm. Take a breath. Aurora did. Barely. Mr. Harlan slid a folder across the table. This outlines your rights. I advise you to read it carefully. Aurora did not touch it. I didn't ask for this, she said quietly. No, Mr. Harlan agreed. You didn't. Outside, the city felt too loud. Aurora and Ms. Brooks walked in silence for a block before Aurora stopped. He turned me into a condition, Aurora said. A variable. Ms. Brooks squeezed her arm. You are not that. But they are treating me like I am, Aurora replied. Her voice cracked. Like something to be measured. Ms. Brooks nodded. That's why you must stay grounded in who you are, not who they think you are. Aurora stared at the street. Cars rushed past. People hurried along, unaware of the storm inside her. What if he dies? Aurora whispered. Ms. Brooks was quiet for a moment. Then you will grieve a man you barely knew, and a future you never chose. Aurora swallowed. And everyone will think I stayed for money. Ms. Brooks looked at her firmly. Then we make sure your actions speak louder than their assumptions. That evening, Aurora sat alone in her apartment, the folder unopened on the table beside the letter. Her phone buzzed. A message appeared. I heard they called you. She stared at the screen. Her hands shook. I'm sorry you learned this way, the message continued. Aurora typed back before fear could stop her. Was I ever a person to you? Or just a test? The reply came slower this time. You were a person. That's what scared me. Aurora's eyes filled with tears. Fear doesn't excuse this, she typed. I know, came the reply, and I won't ask you to forgive me, only to let me explain when I'm strong enough to face you. Aurora leaned back and closed her eyes. She thought of the lake, the letter, the lawyer's cold voice, the weight of choices she never asked to carry. She typed one final message. If we speak, it will be on my terms. The reply came almost instantly. Of course. Aurora set the phone down. For the first time since the retreat, she felt something shift, not toward comfort, but toward clarity. She did not know what she would choose yet. But she knew this much: she would not be silent, and she would not be small. The night settled around her, quiet and watchful, and somewhere far away, a man who had tried to control love waited, forced at last to surrender to it. The next morning, Aurora woke before her alarm. Light crept through the thin gap in her curtains, painting a pale line across the wall. For a moment, she lay still, listening to the quiet hum of the city waking up. Cars in the distance, a neighbor's door closing, life moving forward. She sat up slowly. The weight returned at once. The meeting with the lawyer, the word protocol. The truth that her life was now tied to a man who had tried to measure love with rules and clauses. Aurora pressed her hand to her chest and breathed in, steady and slow. "Today," she whispered, "I choose peace." She dressed and ate a small breakfast, though she barely tasted it. Before leaving, she placed the letter and the legal folder into a drawer and shut it. Not to hide them forever, just for the day. At work, the atmosphere felt different. People spoke in lower voices. Meetings ended quickly. Emails from legal affairs arrived often, full of careful wording and reminders about discretion. Aurora felt eyes on her more than usual, though no one said anything directly. At mid-morning, her manager stopped by her desk. "Hey," he said softly. "Just checking in. You holding up all right?" Aurora nodded. "Yes, thank you." He hesitated. "If you need time off, I'm okay," she said, gently but firmly. He nodded and moved on. Aurora returned to her work, letting the numbers pull her back into something solid. Columns, rows, balance. It helped, but only for a while. Near noon, her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Levi. "I'm back in the country. I'm not well, but I'm here." Aurora's heart skipped. She did not reply right away. She stood and walked to the window, staring out at the street far below. People crossed at the light. A bus pulled up. Ordinary moments continued. "I won't come to your home." Another message appeared. "I won't come to your job. I know I don't have that right." Aurora closed her eyes. "But if you're willing," he continued, "I would like to speak with you. In person. With no lawyers, no papers, just honesty." Aurora's fingers hovered over the screen. She thought of Ms. Brooks's warning. Of her, mentor's words. Of her own heart, bruised but still beating. "Where?" she typed. There was a pause. Then, "A public place. Somewhere you choose." Aurora thought for a moment. "Tomorrow evening," she typed. "At the cafe near the river, 6 o'clock." The reply came quickly. "Thank you." Aurora set the phone down and felt a mix of dread and resolve settle in her chest. The next day passed slowly. Aurora worked, answered emails, and went through the motions. When 5 o'clock came, she shut down her computer and packed her bag with careful movements. Outside, the air was warm. The cafe sat near the river, small and quiet, with large windows and soft lights inside. Aurora arrived early and chose a table near the window, close to other people, but not crowded. She ordered tea and waited. At 6 o'clock sharp, Levi walked in. He looked thinner. His suit hung a little looser on his frame. His face was pale, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. But when he saw Aurora, he stopped like he had hit an invisible wall. She did not stand. She did not smile. He approached slowly. "Thank you for meeting me," he said. "Sit," Aurora replied. He did. For a moment neither spoke. The sounds of the cafe filled the space between them. Cups clinking, low conversation, the soft hiss of the coffee machine. Levi broke the silence first. "I won't justify what I did," he said quietly. There is no excuse. Aurora folded her hands in her lap. Then tell me the truth. He nodded. I found out about my illness the day of the retreat. It shook me more than I expected. I felt like everything I built could disappear overnight. Aurora listened, her face unreadable. I've spent my life being careful. Levi continued. Careful with money, with people, with my heart. Every relationship I've had ended the same way. Someone wanted something from me. Aurora's voice was calm but sharp. So you decided to test someone without telling them? Yes, he admitted, and I hate myself for it. She searched his face. She did not see pride. She did not see control. She saw fear. That night, he said, I thought I was signing a medical release. When I learned the truth the next morning, I panicked. And instead of fixing it, I convinced myself it meant something. That you staying with me mattered. Aurora's jaw tightened. You didn't give me a choice. No, he said. I took it. Silence stretched again. Aurora spoke slowly. Do you know what that felt like? To find out my life was changed without my consent? Levi nodded. Yes, and I'm sorry. She looked at him directly now. I am not here for your money. I don't want it. I don't respect what you did. I know, he said. Then why keep the marriage? Levi's hands trembled slightly on the table. Because when I was at my weakest, you treated me like I was worth something without knowing who I was. And I didn't want to lose that. Aurora's chest tightened. She hated that part of her understood him. Understanding doesn't make it right, she said. I know, Levi replied. They sat there, the truth laid bare between them. Finally, Aurora spoke. I won't file for annulment right now, she said. Not because of your test, not because of your illness, but because I refuse to make decisions out of fear. Levi looked up, surprised. But, she continued, this does not mean forgiveness. This does not mean trust. This means time. He nodded slowly. That's more than I deserve? Aurora stood. We remain legally married. Emotionally, we are strangers. I accept that, Levi said. She hesitated, then added, and if at any point I feel pressured or used again, I will walk away, no matter the cost. Levi met her gaze. I won't stop you. Aurora picked up her bag. As she turned to leave, Levi spoke again. One more thing. She paused but did not turn around. I'm glad you chose dignity, he said softly, even when it hurt. Aurora nodded once. Then she walked out into the evening. Later that night, Aurora sat on her couch, the city lights glowing outside her window. She felt drained, but she also felt something new, control, not over the situation, but over herself. For the first time since the retreat, Aurora slept without nightmares, and though the path ahead was still uncertain, she knew this much. She would not be defined by a mistake. She would define herself, one honest step at a time. Life did not suddenly become easier after the meeting. If anything, it became more careful. Aurora woke the next morning with a strange mix of calm and tension sitting in her chest. The rules were clear now. She and Levi were legally bound, emotionally distant, and moving forward one slow step at a time. Nothing had been fixed, but something had been named, and naming a thing gave it shape. She went through her morning routine with intention. Shower, coffee, prayer. She asked for strength, not answers. Answers could wait. At work, Levi's absence was still felt. His office remained dark. Meetings were led by deputies and lawyers who spoke in smooth phrases and avoided eye contact. Aurora noticed how often people said procedure and protocol, as if those words could replace compassion. She focused on her work. Late that afternoon, an email appeared in her inbox. This time, not from legal affairs, but from Levi himself. Subject: boundaries. The message was short. I will not contact you outside of agreed times. I will not involve lawyers in personal matters. I will respect your space. If at any point you want this to end, I will cooperate fully. Aurora read it twice. She replied with equal care. Thank you for putting that in writing. Please keep all communication limited and transparent. Agreed, came the response. Aurora closed the email and leaned back in her chair. It was strange, setting rules for a marriage that had never been meant to exist. Stranger still was the relief she felt, knowing the rules were hers too. That evening, Aurora returned home and cooked dinner for herself, something warm and simple. As she ate, she noticed how quiet her apartment felt. Not lonely, just still. After dinner, she pulled the handwritten letter from the drawer and sat at the table with it. She read it again, slower this time, without anger, without fear. You treated me like a human being when I was at my weakest. Aurora folded the paper neatly and placed it back in the drawer. She did not feel the urge to respond. Not yet. She spent the next few days settling into a new rhythm. Work, home, church, rest. On Sunday afternoon, after service, she stayed behind to help arrange chairs. The church mentor approached her with a gentle smile. You look steadier, the mentor said. I feel steadier, Aurora replied. Still unsure, but steadier. The mentor nodded. That's often the first step. They sat together near the window, sunlight warming the wooden floor. He spoke to me, Aurora said quietly. I set boundaries. The mentor smiled. Good. But I don't know what comes next. The mentor folded her hands. Next doesn't always reveal itself all at once. Sometimes it shows up in small choices. Kindness here, honesty there. Aurora thought about that on her walk home. A week later, the first letter arrived. It was slipped under her door sometime during the afternoon. No return address, just her name written in careful handwriting. Aurora's heart skipped, not with fear, but with curiosity. She carried it inside and opened it slowly. I promise to respect your space. This letter does not ask for anything. I won't expect a reply. I only wanted to tell you that today I attended my first medical appointment without hiding behind my title. I told the truth. It was terrifying, but it felt right. Aurora sat down, the paper trembling slightly in her hands. He continued, You don't owe me anything. I'm writing this to hold myself accountable. Not to you, but to the man I should have been. Aurora read the letter twice. She did not reply, but something inside her softened just a little. Over the following weeks, the letters continued. They came once every 7 to 10 days, never demanding, never pleading. Each one focused on Levi's own actions, his fears, his mistakes, his attempts to live more honestly. He wrote about sitting alone in hospital waiting rooms, about calling his sister for the first time in years, about eating meals without assistants or schedules. Aurora noticed something important. He never mentioned money. She kept the letters in a small box in her closet. She did not share them with anyone. They felt private in a way nothing else had. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, Aurora sat on her couch with one of the letters open in her lap. I used to believe control kept me safe. Levi had written, Now, I'm learning it only kept me alone. Aurora exhaled slowly. She realized that while she was protecting herself, and rightly so, she was also watching a man unravel habits that had taken him a lifetime to build. It did not erase what he had done, but it complicated the story. Near the end of the month, Aurora received another message, this time from Legal Affairs. Subject: Formal summons. Her stomach tightened as she opened it. She was requested to attend a meeting with Levi's legal team. The tone was urgent but vague. The meeting was scheduled for the following morning. Aurora closed her laptop and stared at the wall. This felt different. She called Ms. Brooks immediately. "They want another meeting," Aurora said. Ms. Brooks sighed. "I was afraid of that." "Do you know why?" "Not yet," Ms. Brooks replied. "But if they're calling you again, it means something has shifted." Aurora's chest tightened. "In what way?" Ms. Brooks paused. "Possibly with his health, or with the estate." Aurora closed her eyes. The letters, the quiet changes, the growing honesty, and now lawyers again. That night, Aurora barely slept. She lay in bed listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sounds of traffic. Her mind replayed every conversation, every word she had read. She was no longer just reacting. She was standing at the edge of something bigger. By morning, she dressed carefully once more, her movements slow and deliberate. She paused at the door, took one steady breath, and whispered a simple prayer. "Let me walk in truth." She stepped outside and headed straight towards the surprise that would change everything. She thought she understood about love, choice, and freedom. The law office felt colder this time. Aurora noticed it the moment she stepped inside, the way the air pressed against her skin, the way voices echoed sharply off the marble floor. Mrs. Brooks walked beside her, calm and steady, her presence a quiet anchor. They were led into the same conference room as before, the same long table, the same leather chairs. But this time there was a second lawyer present, a woman in her late 40s with sharp eyes and a tablet resting neatly in front of her. She did not smile. Mr. Harlan entered last. "Thank you for coming on such short notice," he said, closing the door behind him. Aurora sat, folding her hands in her lap. "You said this was urgent." Mr. Harlan nodded. "It is." Ms. Brooks leaned forward. "Then let's not waste time." The female lawyer tapped her tablet and slid it across the table so the screen faced Aurora. Aurora glanced down. It was a medical document. Her breath caught. "This morning," Mr. Harlan said carefully, "Mr. Levi experienced a significant medical setback." Aurora's heart began to pound. "Is he—" "He's alive," the woman lawyer said, "but his condition has worsened." Aurora swallowed hard. "Why am I here?" Mr. Harlan took a breath. "Because Mr. Levi has invoked a clause within the ethics protocol." Aurora's jaw tightened. "That system again." "Yes," he admitted, "but this time it works in your favor." Ms. Brooks narrowed her eyes. "Explain." Mr. Harlan folded his hands. "If Mr. Levi's condition becomes critical, certain decisions must be made. He has requested that you, not his board, not his family, be consulted." Aurora's chest tightened. "About what?" "About disclosure," Mr. Harlan said. "And about care." Aurora stared at him. "I'm not his doctor." "No," the woman lawyer said calmly. "You are his legal spouse." The words landed like a weight. Aurora shook her head. "I never agreed to make medical choices for him." Mr. Harlan nodded. "And you are not being forced to, but the request has been made." Ms. Brooks spoke firmly. "This feels like pressure." Mr. Harlan met her gaze. "We are informing, not coercing." Aurora's voice trembled. "What kind of disclosure?" Mr. Harlan hesitated, then said, "If Mr. Levy loses the ability to communicate, the estate protocol requires a decision about whether his full identity and wealth are revealed to you formally." Aurora's stomach twisted. "You mean, whether I find out everything?" "Yes," he said, "and if I say no." "Then the system proceeds as designed." The woman lawyer replied, "You remain protected but uninformed." Aurora felt dizzy. Ms. Brooks placed a hand on her arm. "Aurora, breathe." Aurora inhaled slowly. "Why is this happening now?" Mr. Harlan's voice softened, because time may be short. Silence filled the room. Aurora stared at the table, seeing again the reflection of her own face. Older now, wearier than it had been just weeks ago. "Does he know you're asking me this?" she asked. "Yes," Mr. Harlan said. "He insisted." Aurora closed her eyes. She pictured the letters, the quiet confessions, the man trying to peel away his armor piece by piece. She opened her eyes again. "I won't decide today," she said. Mr. Harlan nodded. "That is your right." Ms. Brooks added, "And until she decides, nothing changes." "That is correct," the woman lawyer said. Aurora stood. "Then we're done here." Outside, the sky was heavy with clouds. Aurora and Ms. Brooks walked slowly, neither speaking at first. Finally, Aurora stopped near a small park and sat on a bench. Her hands shook now. She did not try to hide it. "They're pulling me deeper into this," she said, "even when I said I wanted space." Ms. Brooks sat beside her. "Yes, but notice this. They're asking now, not telling." Aurora frowned. "That's not comfort." "No," Ms. Brooks agreed, "but it is a shift." Aurora looked down at her hands. "What if I make the wrong choice?" Ms. Brooks spoke gently. "Then you make the most honest one you can with what you know." Aurora sighed. "I don't want to be responsible for his secrets." "You're not responsible for his past," Ms. Brooks said. "Only for your integrity going forward." Aurora nodded slowly. That evening, Aurora went home and found another letter waiting for her. This one was different. The handwriting was shakier. She sat at the table and opened it carefully. "I had a bad day today," the letter began. "Not the kind I can hide behind reports and meetings, the kind that reminds you how small you really are." Aurora's chest tightened. "They tell me I may not have as much time as I thought. I don't know what the next weeks look like. But I do know this. I don't want to face them lying." Her eyes burned. "I've spent my life controlling what people see. If I lose the chance to speak for myself, I don't want the truth buried behind rules I created out of fear." Aurora set the letter down and pressed her fingers to her lips. She read the final lines twice. "I will respect whatever you choose, even if you choose nothing." Aurora leaned back in her chair. For a long time, she did not move. Later that night, she sat in bed with the lights off, staring into the dark. She thought about dignity, about freedom, about the difference between protection and silence. She thought about how easy it was to let systems decide for you, how tempting it was to step back and say, "This isn't my responsibility." But she also thought about the man who had finally stopped hiding. Aurora rolled onto her side and pulled the blanket closer. She did not yet know what she would decide. But she knew this. If she acted, it would not be out of fear. And if she stayed silent, it would not be because someone forced her to be. The choice would be hers. And for the first time since the retreat, that truth felt like a quiet kind of power. Aurora made her decision at dawn, not because the fear disappeared, not because the answers became clear, but because staying still any longer felt like surrendering her voice to a system that had already taken too much from her. She rose quietly and stood by the window, watching the sky soften from black to grey. The city looked gentle at that hour, forgiving. She whispered a prayer, not for certainty but for courage. Then she picked up her phone. "I will come," she typed, "not as a wife, as a person. And I decide what I hear." The reply came minutes later. "That is all I ever wanted," Levi wrote. The hospital smelled like clean floors and quiet fear. Aurora checked in at the desk and was guided through long halls lined with pale walls and soft lights. Every step felt heavy, like she was walking deeper into something she could not undo. Levi's room was near the end of the hall. Before entering, Aurora paused. She pressed her palm flat against her chest and breathed in slowly. Then she knocked once and stepped inside. Levi lay propped against pillows, thinner than she remembered. Tubes and machines surrounded him, humming softly. His eyes opened when he heard her. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he smiled faintly. "Thank you for coming." Aurora nodded. She stayed near the door. "I'm not staying long. I understand," he said. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the steady beep of a monitor. Levi spoke first. "They told me you were asked about disclosure." "Yes," Aurora said. "They were." "I want you to hear the truth from me," he said. "Not from lawyers, not from papers." Aurora crossed her arms. "Then speak." Levi swallowed. "I am very sick. Worse than I let on. I don't know how much time I have." Aurora felt the words hit her like cold water, but she did not step closer. "And the wealth?" she asked. "The secrets?" Levi closed his eyes for a moment. "I built systems to protect myself. They worked too well. They protected me from honesty." Aurora watched his face. He looked tired, stripped down. "I don't want to die as the man who tested love," he said. "I want to die, or live, as the man who chose truth." Aurora's voice was steady. "Then why involve me at all? Because you are the only one who saw me without the mask," Levi said softly. "And because I don't trust myself to choose correctly anymore." Aurora's chest tightened. "That's a heavy thing to put on someone." "I know," he said, "and I'm sorry." She stepped closer, just a little. "If I listen, it's not agreement, and it's not forgiveness." "I know," he repeated. Aurora nodded once. "Then talk." Levi spoke slowly. He told her about his childhood, about growing up watching people disappear when money ran out, about learning early that power kept people close, but never kept them honest. He spoke of failed relationships, of people who stayed only as long as the benefits flowed. He admitted how the ethics protocol began as protection and turned into a cage. "I told myself it was smart," he said, "that it was fair, but really it was fear." Aurora listened without interruption. When he finished, the room felt heavier, not lighter. Truth had weight. "And the inheritance?" Aurora asked. Levi shook his head. "I don't want it to be the reason you stay, or leave." Aurora studied him. "Then remove the clause." "I can't alone," he said. "Not in this condition. The system requires your presence." Aurora exhaled slowly. "So once again, my choice is tied to your survival." "Yes," he said quietly. Aurora looked at the machines, the lines, the fragile body of a man who once controlled everything. She felt anger rise, and compassion, both at once. "I will listen," she said finally, "but I will not be rushed, and I will not be silent if something feels wrong." Levi nodded. "That's fair." She turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing." "Yes? If you live," she said. "This ends. No tests, no systems, no hidden rules." Levi met her gaze. "If I live, I will choose. Love without protection." Aurora nodded. The days that followed were careful ones. Aurora visited the hospital twice more, each visit clearly defined, each conversation honest and slow. She listened as lawyers explained options. She asked questions. She refused pressure. She remained herself. Between visits, she worked. She rested. She prayed. She did not tell anyone at the office where she was going. One evening after leaving the hospital, Aurora walked along the river near the cafe where they had first spoken. The water moved steadily, unchanged by human drama. She realized something then. She was no longer reacting to Levi's fear. She was acting from her own strength. That night, she opened the box of letters and reread them, not with hope, but with clarity. The man behind the words was flawed, afraid, trying. But whether he lived or died, Aurora knew this truth now. She had already chosen herself, and that choice would guide whatever came next. As the city lights reflected on the river, Aurora turned toward home, aware that the next chapter would demand more courage than any before it, but certain she would meet it standing upright, not bowed. Because love, she had learned, was never proven by tests. It was proven by truth. The hospital called just after sunrise. Aurora was halfway through making coffee when her phone rang. The sound cut through the quiet like a warning. She answered before the second ring finished. "Ms. Aurora?" A nurse asked gently. "Yes. I'm calling to let you know that Mr. Levi has been stabilized overnight. He's awake but weak. He asked if you might visit later today." Aurora closed her eyes and let out a slow breath. Stabilized. The word carried hope, but also caution. "I can come this afternoon," she said. "Thank you," the nurse replied. "He'll be glad to hear that." After the call ended, Aurora stood still for a long moment. The coffee maker beeped, forgotten. She turned it off and leaned against the counter, steadying herself. This was no longer about paperwork or protocols. This was about people. The hospital room looked brighter that afternoon. Sunlight streamed through the window, touching the white sheets and the metal rails of the bed. Levi lay propped up, his eyes open, his breathing slow but even. When he saw Aurora enter, something softened in his face. "You came," he said. "I said I would," Aurora replied. She pulled a chair close to the bed but did not take his hand. That boundary still mattered. Levi watched her quietly for a moment. "I spoke to my lawyers this morning," he said. Aurora's shoulders tensed. "About what?" "About ending the ethics clause." Levi replied. "The part that binds disclosure to silence." Aurora studied him. "And?" "They told me it can't be undone without a formal process," he said, "and that process requires witnesses." Aurora sighed. "Everything does." Levi nodded. "But I told them I was done, hiding. I told them I want the truth made plain." Aurora felt a shift inside her, small but real. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means I will publicly acknowledge our marriage," Levi said. "Not as a business decision, not as a test, but as a mistake I must take responsibility for." Aurora's heart pounded. "Publicly?" "Yes," he said. "To my board, to my family, to anyone who needs to hear it." Aurora looked out the window, gathering herself. "People will talk. They already do," Levi said softly. She turned back to him. "And if you don't survive?" Levi's jaw tightened. "Then I want my last act to be honesty." Aurora swallowed hard. She thought of Ms. Brooks's words. "Make sure your actions speak louder than their assumptions." "All right," she said. "I'll stand there, but I won't speak for you." Levi nodded. "I wouldn't ask you to." The meeting was scheduled for 2 days later. Aurora returned to work and moved through her tasks with steady focus. No one asked questions, but she could feel the tension under the surface. Rumors always traveled faster than facts. That evening, Ms. Brooks called. "I heard about the hospital visit," she said. Aurora smiled faintly. "Word gets around." Ms. Brooks huffed softly. "It always does. Are you holding up?" "I think so," Aurora replied. "He wants to tell the truth. All of it." Ms. Brooks was quiet for a moment. "That's a dangerous thing for powerful men to do." "I know," Aurora said. "But it's also the right one." 2 days later, Aurora stood outside a private conference room inside Levi's headquarters. The same building she had worked in for years, the same halls she walked every day. But today, everything felt different. Inside the room sat Levi's board members, senior lawyers, and a few family representatives. The air buzzed with quiet tension. Aurora entered last. Levi sat at the head of the table, looking tired but determined. When he saw her, he gave a small nod. Not a command, a thank you. The meeting began. Levi spoke slowly, his voice steady despite the strain. "I asked you all here because I owe you the truth," he said. "Not as your CEO, but as a man who made a serious mistake." Murmurs rippled around the table. Levi continued. He explained the retreat, the paperwork, the marriage. He admitted his fear, his illness, his use of systems to avoid vulnerability. Aurora stood quietly to the side, hands folded, heart pounding. "I turned love into a test," Levi said, "and that was wrong." Silence filled the room. A board member cleared his throat. "This has legal implications." "I'm aware," Levi replied, "and I accept them." Another voice spoke. "What does this mean for the company?" Levi's gaze was firm. "It means we choose ethics over image." Aurora felt a tightness in her chest loosen. When the meeting ended, people filed out slowly, stunned. No one approached Aurora. No one accused her. That, too, felt like a victory. Outside the room, Levi slumped slightly, exhaustion catching up to him. "You didn't have to do that," Aurora said softly. "Yes," he replied. "I did." That night, Aurora returned home feeling wrung out. She sat on her couch, lights off, city glowing beyond the window. Her phone buzzed with messages from co-workers, confused, curious, respectful. She did not reply. Instead, she opened her Bible and read a single line, over and over. "The truth will set you free." She closed the book and leaned back. For the first time, she felt the weight shifting, not disappearing, but moving off her shoulders. Levi had chosen truth. Now the rest would unfold as it would. Aurora knew harder moments were still ahead. Public judgment, private pain, unanswered questions. But she also knew this. She was no longer standing in someone else's shadow. She was standing in the light, and whatever came next, she would meet it with her head held high. The fallout did not come all at once. It arrived in waves. The morning after the meeting, Aurora woke to a phone buzzing non-stop on her nightstand. She let it ring while she sat up slowly, already bracing herself. When she finally looked, there were missed calls, messages, and emails, some from co-workers, some from unknown numbers, some from reporters fishing for a story. She turned the phone face down. Not today. Aurora moved through her morning carefully. She made tea instead of coffee. She stood by the window and watched the sun rise, steady and faithful, like it always had. The world had not ended. It had simply shifted. At work, the tension was thick. People stopped talking when she walked by. Not out of cruelty, but confusion. No one knew how to act around her now. Was she still just an accountant? Or something else? Aurora kept her head high and went straight to her desk. Mid-morning, an email arrived from Human Resources requesting a private meeting. The tone was respectful, but cautious. Aurora took a breath and replied, "Yes." The HR director met her in a small office with frosted glass walls. She looked tired, like someone who had been putting out fires all night. "Thank you for coming," the director said. "I want to be very clear. This meeting is about support, not discipline." Aurora nodded. "I understand." The director folded her hands. "There will be changes, temporary ones. You may wish to take paid leave while things settle." Aurora considered that. She did not want to hide, but she also did not want to become a symbol people whispered about. "I'll take a week," she said. Then I'll return." The director smiled, relieved. That's reasonable. When Aurora left the office, she felt strangely light. For the first time, she was choosing rest without guilt. That afternoon, Aurora visited the hospital again. Levi looked weaker than before. The effort of speaking publicly had taken a toll. Still, when he saw her, his eyes brightened. "I heard HR offered you leave," he said quietly. Aurora nodded. "I accepted." "That's good," he said. "You deserve peace." She sat in the chair beside his bed. "So do you." He gave a small smile. "I don't know if peace is in the cards for me." Aurora studied him. "How do you feel?" "Tired," he admitted, "but lighter." She nodded. "Truth does that." They sat together in silence for a while. No tension, no urgency. Just two people sharing space. "I wanted to say thank you," Levi said finally. "For standing there, for not running." Aurora met his gaze. "I didn't stay for you. I stayed for myself." "I know," he replied. "That's why it mattered." The next few days were quiet. Aurora stayed home, turned off notifications, and let herself rest. She cleaned her apartment. She cooked meals she liked. She walked in the park and watched children play, their laughter bright and careless. On the fourth day, a letter arrived. Not handwritten this time, but official. It was from Levi's legal team. Aurora's heart tightened as she opened it. The letter explained that a sealed clause in Levi's will had been triggered by the public disclosure, a clause she had never been told about. She read it slowly, her hands growing cold. If Levi died without formally rescinding the clause himself, Aurora would inherit everything, but would never know whether his final silence was fear or choice. Aurora sank into a chair. So even now, even after truth, there were still traps hidden in the fine print. Her phone buzzed. It was Levi. "I need to see you." His message read, "There's something I forgot to tell you." Aurora closed her eyes. The quiet peace she had found cracked open, letting fear rush back in. She typed slowly. "We need to talk, but not like this." "I agree," Levi replied. "Tomorrow, wherever you choose." Aurora stared at the message. She thought of the clause, the inheritance, the way love kept getting tangled with control. She typed one final line. "Tomorrow morning, at the church." There was a pause. Then, "I'll be there." Aurora set the phone down and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. She felt the familiar ache of disappointment. Just when she thought the truth was finally free, another shadow appeared. But beneath that ache was something stronger. Resolve. This time, she would not wait for systems or lawyers or illness to decide what love meant. Tomorrow, she would draw a line so clear it could not be misunderstood. And whatever fell on the other side of that line, wealth, loss, or heartbreak, Aurora knew she would walk away whole. Because dignity, once claimed, could not be taken back. The church was quiet when Aurora arrived. Morning light filtered through the tall windows, soft and golden, touching the wooden pews and the worn hymnals resting inside them. The building smelled faintly of old books and lemon polish. It was the kind of place where voices naturally lowered, where truth felt heavier but safer at the same time. Aurora sat in the third pew from the front. She had arrived early on purpose. She needed time to steady herself. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers laced together, knuckles pale. She breathed in slowly and let the quiet settle her nerves. She was tired, not the kind of tired sleep could fix, but the deep kind that came from carrying other people's fear for too long. Footsteps echoed near the entrance. Aurora did not turn around. She already knew who it was. Levi walked down the aisle slowly. He looked weaker than the last time she had seen him, his steps careful, his shoulders slumped as if gravity pressed harder on him now. He wore a simple dark jacket instead of a suit. No power armor today, just a man. He stopped beside her pew. "Thank you for meeting me here," he said softly. Aurora nodded once. "Sit." He did. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence felt different here. Not sharp, not threatening, just honest. Aurora broke it. "I received a letter from your lawyers," she said calmly, "about the sealed clause." Levi closed his eyes. "I was afraid of that," he said. She turned to face him fully. "You said you were done hiding." "I believed I was," he replied, "but systems don't unravel as fast as hearts do." Aurora's jaw tightened. "Explain it to me, clearly, no soft words." Levi swallowed. "If I die before formally revoking that clause, you inherit everything. But the clause also prevents any final disclosure of intent. Meaning, you would never know if my silence was fear or peace." Aurora let out a slow breath. "So even in death, I would still be guessing." "Yes," Levi said quietly. "And that isn't fair." "No," she agreed. "It isn't." He turned toward her. "I didn't include it to trap you. I included it because I didn't trust myself." Aurora looked straight ahead at the altar. "That keeps coming up." "I know," he said, "and I hate it." She folded her hands tighter. "Here is what will not happen. I will not inherit your money as a question mark. I will not carry your secrets as a burden. And I will not let love turn into silence again." Levi nodded slowly. "Then tell me what must happen." Aurora turned back to him. Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned. "You revoke the clause," she said. "Publicly, fully, today." Levi hesitated. Aurora did not miss it. "You're afraid," she said. "Yes," he admitted, "because removing it means surrendering the last thing that lets me control the outcome." Aurora stood. The sound of her movement echoed softly through the sanctuary. She faced him now, not angry, not shouting, just resolved. "Then listen to me," she said. "Love cannot be proven by outcomes. It is proven by choice. And if you need control more than truth, then we are done. Completely." Levi looked up at her, eyes wet. "I don't want to lose you," he said. Aurora's voice softened, but did not bend. "Then stop trying to protect yourself from loss. It's too late for that." Silence filled the space again. Levi's shoulders sagged. "You're right," he said finally. "I've been trying to survive instead of live." He pushed himself up slowly, gripping the back of the pew for balance. "I will revoke it," he said. "Today, with witnesses, with no conditions." Aurora studied him, searching for hesitation. She found none. "Good," she said. They sat back down, the tension easing just enough to breathe. Levi spoke again, quieter now. "There's something else." Aurora closed her eyes briefly. "Go on." "If I live," Levi said, "I don't want a marriage built on recovery rooms and legal clauses. I don't want gratitude or obligation." Aurora opened her eyes. "I don't want you to stay because you feel sorry for me," he continued, "or because leaving feels cruel." Aurora looked at him carefully. "And if you don't live?" Levi's voice trembled. "Then I want my last act to be choosing honesty, not leverage." Aurora nodded. "That's the first time you've said something that sounds like love." Levi managed a small smile. Footsteps approached from the side door. The church mentor entered quietly, followed by Ms. Brooks. They stopped a few feet away, reading the room. Aurora stood again. "We're ready." Ms. Brooks raised an eyebrow. "Ready for what?" Levi answered. "To end the clause. Fully." Ms. Brooks nodded once. "Then let's do this properly." They moved to a small table near the front of the church. Papers were laid out. Signatures required. Witnesses present. Levi's hand shook slightly as he signed. Aurora watched closely. No tricks. No fine print. When he finished, Ms. Brooks collected the documents and looked at Aurora. "It's done," she said. Aurora felt something release inside her chest. Not joy, not relief exactly. Freedom. Levi lowered himself back into the pew, exhausted. Aurora sat beside him. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Levi whispered, "Whatever happens now, thank you for not letting me lie my way out of fear." Aurora looked at him, eyes gentle but firm. "Don't thank me," she said. "Live honestly. That's the only thanks that matters." Outside, church bells rang softly in the distance. Aurora stood and picked up her bag. "I'm going home," she said. Levi nodded. "I understand." She paused, then added, "This doesn't mean I'm staying. It means the story is finally clean." He met her gaze. "That's more than I hoped for." Aurora turned and walked down the aisle alone. Her steps were slow, but sure. For the first time since the retreat, there were no hidden clauses following her out the door. Only choice. And whatever tomorrow held, she would meet it unburdened, unafraid, and fully herself. The days after, the church meeting passed slowly, like time itself had decided to walk instead of run. Aurora stayed home at first, not out of fear, but because she needed space to hear her own thoughts again. She cleaned her apartment from top to bottom, wiping shelves, folding clothes, opening windows to let fresh air push out the stale heaviness that had clung to her walls for weeks. Each morning, she woke early and sat by the window with her tea, watching the city come alive. She noticed things she had ignored before, the way the sun hit the rooftops, the sound of footsteps on the sidewalk below, the quiet faithfulness of routine. For the first time in a long while, her life felt like it belonged to her again. Levi did not contact her, not once, and that mattered. On the fourth day, Ms. Brooks called. "The documents have been filed," she said. "Everything is clean, no clauses, no conditions." Aurora closed her eyes. "Thank you. You did the hard part." Ms. Brooks replied, "I just made it official." After the call ended, Aurora sat still for a long moment. She expected relief to rush in, or joy, or sadness. Instead, she felt steady. That was new. Levi's condition worsened 2 nights later. Aurora learned about it from the church mentor, who called early in the morning. He was taken back to the hospital. The mentor said gently, "They don't know what the next few days will look like." Aurora's chest tightened. "Did he ask for me?" she asked quietly. "Yes," the mentor said, "but he also said you are not to feel obligated." Aurora thanked her and hung up. She sat on the edge of her bed, hands resting on her knees, staring at the floor. The room felt too quiet. She thought about the man she had seen in the hospital bed, stripped of power, stripped of certainty, trying, at last, to live honestly. She stood and reached for her coat. Not out of duty, out of choice. The hospital room was dim when Aurora arrived. The curtains were drawn, and only a small lamp near the bed cast a warm glow. Levi lay still, eyes closed, his breathing shallow but steady. Aurora stepped inside softly. She pulled a chair close, but did not touch him. She did not speak right away. She simply sat and listened to the quiet rhythm of the room. After a while, Levi stirred. His eyes opened slowly. When he saw her, a faint smile touched his lips. "You came," he whispered. "Yes," Aurora said. He swallowed. "You didn't have to." "I know," she replied. They sat in silence again. This time it felt different, not tense, not heavy, just real. "I signed everything," Levi said softly, "before they brought me back here. There's nothing left undone." Aurora nodded. "I know." He looked at her carefully. Are you angry with me? Aurora thought about the question. Really thought about it. No, she said finally. I was. But not anymore. Levi closed his eyes briefly, like the words gave him rest. I don't expect anything from you, he said. I won't ask you to stay, or forgive me, or love me. Aurora studied his face. He looked older now. Not weaker, just human. That's the first time you've said that without trying to control the outcome, she said. A faint smile returned. I'm learning. She leaned back in her chair. I need you to hear something. He opened his eyes again. I'm listening. I don't know what the future holds, Aurora said, and I won't promise you anything I can't give. I understand, Levi said. But, she continued, I won't let fear be the loudest voice in the room anymore. Not yours, not mine. Levi nodded slowly. That's fair. Aurora stood. I'll visit when I can, as a friend, as a person, not as a wife. Levi's throat worked. Thank you. Over the next 2 weeks, Aurora returned to work. The building felt different now. Quieter, more respectful. People nodded instead of whispering. Some smiled shyly, unsure what to say. Aurora did her job. She kept her head high. She did not explain herself. She visited Levi twice more. Each time he looked weaker, but calmer. He spoke less, listened more. One afternoon, as she prepared to leave, Levi reached out and touched her hand lightly. Whatever happens, he said, meeting you changed me. Aurora did not pull away, but she did not lean in either. I hope it did, she replied. That means something good came from all this. The call came on a quiet Sunday morning. Levi had slipped into a critical state overnight. Aurora sat on her couch, phone pressed to her ear, her heart pounding. When the call ended, she did not cry. She prayed. Then she went to the hospital. Levi was unconscious when she arrived. Machines hummed softly around him. The room felt suspended in time. Aurora stood at the foot of the bed for a long moment. Then she stepped closer. I don't know if you can hear me, she said softly, but I want you to know something. She took a breath. You chose truth. That mattered. Whatever happens next, you didn't hide this time. She reached out and rested her hand lightly on the blanket near his arm. Thank you for letting me be free. She stayed until visiting hours ended. That night, Aurora returned home and stood by her window once more. The city lights blinked steadily below. She felt grief, uncertainty, love in a form she had never known before. But she also felt something else. Peace. Not because the story was over, but because, no matter how it ended, she had walked through it with dignity, honesty, and courage. And whatever tomorrow brought, loss or miracle, Aurora knew she would meet it standing tall, heart open, and soul intact. She turned off the light and went to bed, ready for what came next. The phone call came just as Aurora was sitting down for dinner. It was the hospital, confirming what she had already feared. Levi's condition had worsened overnight. His heart had weakened further, and his breathing was more labored than ever. The doctors were unsure if he would make it through the night. Aurora hung up the phone and sat there for a moment, the weight of the words sinking in. The stillness of her apartment felt suffocating, like the walls were closing in on her. She stood slowly, setting the half-eaten plate aside. There was no decision to make. She knew where she needed to be. The hospital was quieter than usual when she arrived. The usual sounds of bustle were replaced with hushed voices and the soft beeping of machines. When she reached Levi's room, she found him resting, his eyes closed, pale under the harsh light of the fluorescent lamps. Tubes ran from his arms, and the steady rhythm of the machines kept him tethered to life. Aurora stepped closer. She didn't touch him, but she stayed close enough to feel the weight of the room, the unspoken tension that hung between them like a thick fog. His eyelids fluttered slightly, and he turned his head toward her. "Thank you for coming," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Aurora swallowed the lump in her throat. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected him to still be here, still fighting. "You don't have to thank me," she replied softly. "I'm here." Levi tried to lift a hand, but it trembled. "I don't want to leave without knowing you're okay." Aurora's heart ached. "I'm fine," she said, though she wasn't sure if she believed it herself. He closed his eyes again, as if the effort had drained him. The silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was a space where the words didn't need to be spoken anymore. "I'm sorry," Levi said, his voice barely more than a whisper. "I was afraid, and I pushed you away." Aurora's eyes softened. "You don't have to apologize anymore." He shook his head weakly. "I hurt you. I tested you." Aurora's chest tightened. She took a step closer, but she didn't reach out to touch him. She was afraid to. "Levi," she said gently, "you didn't just hurt me. You hurt yourself, but I think you're trying to fix it. And that's something." He turned his head slightly, meeting her gaze. There was no deflection this time, just vulnerability. "I don't know if I can fix everything," he said, "but I've learned that the things that matter don't need to be controlled. They just need to be real." Aurora stood there, the truth of his words sinking in. She wanted to say something that would ease both their hearts, but she couldn't find the right words. Instead, she just nodded. Levi's hand twitched again, as if he wanted to reach for hers but didn't have the strength. Aurora didn't take it, but she stood still, her presence enough for both of them. "I won't forget what you've taught me," Levi said, his voice growing weaker. Aurora finally spoke, her voice steady but soft. "Then don't forget to forgive yourself." He smiled faintly, his eyes fluttering closed once more. Aurora stood by his side, silent and still. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel the need to fix anything either. It wasn't about the past anymore, it was about the present. And maybe, just maybe, there was still time to heal. The following days were a blur of quiet moments. Levi's health remained fragile, but there was a shift in the air. He no longer feared the truth or the consequences. The walls that had kept him isolated, distant, slowly began to fall away. Aurora continued visiting him, but each time the conversations grew shorter, simpler. There were no more tests, no more clauses to negotiate. There was only presence, only the shared understanding that, despite everything, they had reached a place of raw honesty. On the 6th day, Aurora arrived to find Levi awake but barely able to keep his eyes open. He looked up when she entered, a faint, tired smile crossing his face. "I'm still here," he whispered. Aurora sat down beside him, her hand brushing against his. The contact was light, tentative, but it spoke volumes. There was no need for words anymore. Neither of them needed to speak the fears or the regrets. They simply existed in this moment, together. "I'm glad you're still here," she said quietly. Levi's hand tightened around hers just a little, and for the first time in a long while, Aurora felt peace. A week passed, and Levi's condition slowly improved. The doctors were cautious but hopeful. Aurora continued her visits, each time finding him a little stronger, a little more present. The once heavy air in the room now felt lighter, as though the weight of unspoken things had been lifted. On one afternoon visit, Levi turned to her with an expression of quiet gratitude. "I thought I was done." he said, his voice hoarse but steady. I thought I had nothing left to give, but you showed me that I still had a choice. Aurora smiled softly, her eyes tender. We always have a choice, even in the hardest moments. Levi nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. I never thought I'd find peace. I never thought I'd find someone who would stand by me without expectations. Aurora squeezed his hand gently. You're not alone anymore, Levi. Not in the way you think. He reached for her hand, his grip strong but shaky. Thank you for staying, for seeing me. Aurora leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm here, just as I am. And in that moment, surrounded by quiet hope and shared healing, both of them knew that the past would never define them again. Levi's recovery was slow, but steady. Each day felt like a new victory, no matter how small. He was no longer trapped in the cycle of fear and regret that had defined his life for so long. Instead, he was slowly learning how to live in the present, accepting the reality of his illness and the truth of his actions. Aurora continued to visit, though now the conversations were different. They no longer focused on what had been lost or broken. Instead, they talked about what could be. They talked about the future, about healing, and about building a life that was no longer based on secrets or tests. One afternoon, as the light filtered through the window, Levi reached for Aurora's hand. His grip was steady, his eyes searching hers for something that had been missing before. I don't know how to thank you, he said softly, for staying, for seeing me. Not the image I built, but me. Aurora smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in a long time. You don't need to thank me, Levi. You've already done the hardest part. He looked at her, his expression serious. No, the hardest part was letting go of the fear that kept me hidden. Aurora's voice softened. We all have things we're afraid to let go of. Levi nodded. But I've learned that sometimes you have to let go to move forward. I'm not asking you to stay, but if you do, I won't make you carry my fears anymore. Aurora's chest tightened, but she knew what she had to say. I'm here, Levi, she said quietly. Not because I have to be, but because I choose to be. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Levi's smile was one of complete peace. And in that moment, Aurora knew that the road ahead, whatever it held, would be walked with honesty, and with the kind of love that did not ask for perfection, just for truth. Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow I'll bring you another story crafted with heart.